Okay, should we make a start? Apologies for the slight delay. First item is apologies for absence. I understand there are no apologies for absence. Secondly, urgent business. There are no items of urgent business. Third, declarations of interest. Does any member have an interest to declare in any matter on the agenda? No? Item 4, public question time. There are no public questions to consider. Item 5, minutes of the Cabinet meeting held on the 14th of November 2022. Does Cabinet agree the minutes held on the 14th of November 2022?
Agree.
Thank you. Item 6, Children's Services Investment Proposals. Councillor Moores.
Thank you. I am sure we all understand the ongoing pressures on council finances, but we must also recognise the challenges of increased demand and a national shortage of social workers that is facing the Children's Care Service. That is why the investment into children's services is absolutely vital. If we are to maintain our commitment to focus on our children and young people, as Councillor Chatterton said last week, this is a local response to a national crisis. What we are proposing is a £14.7 million investment, and this will involve 4 key elements. Firstly, providing better early support for families. This will involve external funding to provide a greater range of services at key children's centres and the provision of targeted support for families who need less intensive support. The next element is providing the very best care for our most vulnerable children and young people by investing in our workforce and increasing the capacity of our assessment teams and in fostering support. It also involves offering improved support for young people leaving care by increasing the amount of move-on accommodation and providing initial financial support for young people moving into independence. This element will also include opening a new children's home for children and young people with learning disabilities. The third element is making Oldham one of the best places to be a social worker. We will achieve this by reviewing pay and conditions and recruiting permanent staff, which will allow us to improve quality and provide continuity of care for our children. The final element is about supporting and rewarding foster carers by increasing allowances by 10% and recruiting 5 highly trained foster carers to offer support and advice across the borough. This proposal, alongside other work, along with other work going on in Oldham and GM, will provide the financial stability needed for the service and, importantly, the best support and outcomes for children and young people and their families. This investment will also support the objectives of the Getting to Good programme in improving the quality provision and ensuring the very best outcomes for vulnerable children and their families. Thank you.
Does any member got any questions or comments they wish to make? No? Okay, can I thank Councillor Moores and also the Children's Services team, led by our DCS as well, and for this outstanding piece of work. I know an awful lot of hard work and time has gone into this. Now, when I became leader in May, I set out my priorities and I was clear that I wanted to lead a council and a town that put children and young people at the heart of everything that we do. Children and young people should be the golden thread that runs through this organisation, and this is a culmination of some of the work we set on track 6 months ago. As Councillor Moores has outlined, we talk about making the Oldham the best place to be a social worker. We will be reviewing the terms and conditions to ensure that our social workers are paid what they should be for the outstanding job that we do. There will be a retention payment as well to reward our social workers that stay with us. We will be recognising and rewarding our fabulous foster carers with an increase in 10%, which is in addition to the 4% new allowance increase that was given a few months ago. That makes us one of the highest payers for allowances for foster carers in the north of England, and they should be recognised for the support they give to over 250 young people in this town. We're also providing the best care for our most vulnerable children, and that includes the opening of a new council-led children's home for some of our most complex for some children with most complex vulnerabilities and disabilities as well, ensuring that they're closer to home, closer to the families and closer to the friends. And then also increasing the early help offer to prevent families going into crisis and needing social services, and that includes £5.7 million of additional investment, that is external funding as well. Now, fundamentally, what this does is increase our permanent social workers by 50. That is an increase of 25% of our social workers, and we'll also be recruiting 17 social care support workers as well, to ensure that they can do some of the back office functions, so our social workers are able to spend as much time as possible out with our children and young families. Now, this is a significant amount of money, and we are at the forefront in terms of investment in children's social care and some of the work that we are doing around retention and recognising what our social workers do for us. But the reality is, social care is in crisis, and it's a national crisis. It's not a crisis made in Oldham or in any other council. It is a national crisis that the government has got to get a grip on. We can do what we can do, and we're doing an awful lot to address some of these problems, but now we really need the government to do their bit to stop private companies profiteering from this crisis, and this is particularly in relation to social workers who are agency staff. Now, all councils are reliant on agency staff. Us is the same as everywhere else, and these do a fantastic job. But the reality is, for every agency social worker, they can cost the local authority up to £20,000 more per year just in agency fees. Now, if we look not too far away in Northern Ireland, there's been a ban of a quota placed in nearly all of Northern Ireland now on social care agency workers. And, we want the government to look at something similar to this, because that money for £20,000 additional per social worker would be better spent in children's social care, improving outcomes and supporting our young people. So thank you again to Eddie and for the social care services for this report. Are we all in agreement?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 7, budget forecast for the financial years 23-24 and 24-25. Councillor Jabbar.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is a really important report, Chair, which updates Cabinet on the position that we have for the next 2 financial years. You'll recall when we set the budget last year in March, our projected gap for next year was 16.711 million. Unfortunately, that gap has widened very significantly, as detailed in the report, to 27.975 million. The reasons for that are increase in pay for our staff, which is very well deserved, increased cost in energy, and inflation cost in contracts that we have with various providers. And additionally, Chair, there's been a massive increase in inflation. As we know, the inflation is running at 11.1%. All those factors have a massive impact on our financial activity of the Council. Now, in the autumn statement, which the Chancellor delivered on the 17th of October, we did get some additional money in relation to business rate and adult social care. It's very much welcomed, but despite that, the numbers I've given you are the updated figures. In other words, nearly £28 million is required for the next financial year, and there's 14 million, just over 14.5 million for the following year to balance the budget. Now, whilst the government has recognised that we needed more money, Chair, the government hasn't provided the money that we need to provide key services. So if you look at adult social care, for example, and children's services that you talked about in the previous item, where we're investing here for all kinds of reasons, and that's the right decision, by the way, to do it, they're not giving us the money that we need to reflect the additional increase in demands. And that is a real issue for us. So I would say, Chair, the recommendation here is for you to note the report. But, on next week, the Chancellor and his team and all the departments, they have the chance to set the local government provisional settlement. And I just hope that the government is listening, and it's not just us here in Oldham. Right across the country, councils are struggling. In fact, if I could just refer to a couple of council chair, Kent and Herefordshire have actually written to the Prime Minister saying that they cannot cope with the funding that's available currently, and they're in danger of going bankrupt. That's how serious it is. So it isn't just in Oldham. All local authority government, local authorities are suffering, and for a long, long time, the LGA has been campaigning to provide proper funding for a council like Oldham for us to be able to continue to deliver key local services. So, Chair, is going to be a real challenge. We are working on developing budget cuts right across the council to find the saving, but you know, at a time when there is massive cost of living impact in places like Oldham, I just say that government have an opportunity next week to help us and help the country as a whole. I'm happy to. I'm sorry, it's a rather depressing set of numbers, but that's where we are. I'm happy to take any questions colleague may have.
Any questions or comments on the report? No? Okay, well, can I thank Councillor Jabbar, and can I also thank Anne Lyons as both a treasurer as well for all the work that's gone on over the past few weeks. The budget cap that the council faces, as Councillor Jabbar has outlined, is probably one of the biggest we've ever seen. We're expecting now to find savings of over £40 million, which equates to nearly 20% of our base budget. And, you know, this is, I suppose, a whole range of issues. We've got the legacy of the pandemic, Brexit, Russia's invasion of the Ukraine, inflationary pressures, and in turn how that's affected the energy prices, and then also the general cost of living, but also the turbulence within Westminster and the absolute chaotic mini-budget a couple of months ago. Do you know, there is a financial gap in this country, but that is through the making of this Conservative government. And as Councillor Jabbar said, you know, we call on the government to don't take this out on us. I've written to the Chancellor and said, this is a mess of your own making. Oldham Council has been hammered by austerity. We've lost nearly 50% of our budget in the past 12 years. We then get hammered by the pandemic, and now we're hammered by this as well. And we've got a motion coming to Council on Wednesday, haven't we, that reiterates that message, and I hope that every councillor in this chamber on Wednesday night gets behind that in the interest of Oldham and Oldham's residents. So if there's nothing else, are we all in agreement? Thank you. Item 8. Revenue Monitor and Capital Investment Programme 2022 to 23, quarter 2 to September 22. Councillor Jabbar.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a regular report that we bring to Cabinet to update our spend position for both revenue and capital. It's the normal format, Chair, where we tell you what's happening in each department, each directorate, and also what's happening in terms of the deliverability of the budget in terms of achieving, balanced budget. So at this moment in time, this is for the first 6 months, obviously end of September. At this moment in time, we're projecting there will be a deficit of 4.452 million. I'm hoping that the actions that we're taking now to address that will hopefully deliver a balanced budget at the end of the financial year. You won't be surprised to learn, Chair, that the overspending is happening in adult social care and children's services. Again, mostly down to increased demands. Obviously, if somebody turns to the council for help and they're vulnerable, we have a statutory responsibility to provide that help, and we're doing that, and we'll continue to do that. In terms of capital, Chair, the updated position is... if I can get to the right page. The updated position at the end of September is that we spent 18.842 million, which equates to something like 28%, roughly 28% of the total budget. We started off with £100 million as a budget, but we've revised it. Our latest estimate is that it will be around £68 million. I don't think there are any concern, but what I've said in my earlier comment, we have seen in number of contracts, Chair, the price has increased because of the increase in material cost and general inflationary costs. But any underspend that we've got in this year will be forwarded to next year, so there isn't any lost in that. I'm happy, Chair, again to take any questions either on the revenue part of the report or in the capital part. Thank you.
Any questions or comments? No? Are we all in agreement? Item 9, Schools National Funding Formula. Councillor Jabbar.
Thank you, Chair. So this report details the potential increase that we're going to get in our school funding. It looks quite positive, Chair, that government has recognised the pressure the schools are facing and they're giving us additional money. If you look at page 114 or 4 of the report, it details the new money that we're getting in, which is just over 9.4 million. In addition to that, the Chancellor announced that there would be 2.3 billion nationally, which will be given to schools to recognise pay increases, energy cost and general inflationary. The detail of that we haven't got yet, and it's not included obviously in the report, but I'm hoping it will be announced very shortly, but definitely will be announced as part of the provisional settlement. We have been working with the school forum and they're aware of the content of this report. So overall, Chair, quite good news, and obviously when we get the additional money, it will provide much needed support to schools, particularly the schools who are struggling. Again, happy to take any questions.
Any questions or comments? No? Okay, does the Cabinet agree? Agreed. Item 10, Award of Contract for the Provision of School Swimming Transport Services. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is in relation to awarding the contract for the provision of school swimming transport services. Full tender process has already taken place to ensure best value for money, and this will ensure that a safe and high quality transport provision is provided to children in our borough so that they can travel from their school to the swimming pool and vice versa to access the school swimming provision. The contract will run for 3 years, taking us up to the end of 2025, with an option to extend for a further 2 years. The level of transport provision needed is dependent on the level of school buyback in each service year, but the cost of the transport is covered by a service level agreement. The details of who the contract has been awarded to and the value of the contract is included in recommendations at the end of the report, and we are looking for a recommendation to award the contract as detailed in the report.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? No? Does Cabinet agree?
Agreed.
Okay, that's the end of Cabinet. Thank you.